Hi, my name is Benny Johnson. As some of you know, I've been struggling with addiction. However, I decided to change my life and went into recovery. I've started this podcast 90 Days Clean, and I want to take you along in my journey. What does lie ahead of me? Let me be frank, I do not know. Will I ever drink again? I do not know. This is how Stairway to Redemption was born. It is my search for answer in a real-time process of what is going to work for me. It is then my aspiration to help you figure out what's going to work for you. It is our journey together. Hello and welcome to another episode of Stairway to Redemption. Today we are going to talk about hypnotherapy. Yes, hypnotherapy has been a very popular method to address trauma, especially childhood trauma, and help with not only trauma recovery but in addiction recovery as well. As we know, a lot of addiction is due to trauma, our relationship with trauma. And today's guest is RTT hypnotherapist and emotional healer Carolina Fisher to educate us on this topic. So, hi Carolina, how you doing?
Hi, Benny. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So, here at the Stairway to Redemption podcast, the first question is the state of the mind address. It's basically how are you doing lately? Like something deeper than I'm just doing fine or not
Mhm.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm doing good. I'm still gonna start with this.
All right. That's
And
good.
yeah, I always, as a hypnotherapist and emotional healer, I always definitely work on myself, right? I always try to become aware of deeper layers, and especially with having kids, where you get confronted with a lot of things daily as they
Mm-hmm.
grow up. So I am I'm working on a lot of things at the same time, but at the moment I think I could say boundaries is my issue, like when I go deeper, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
boundary setting, being more assertive, because I like to flow through life, and I like to be very loving and kind, and that's just how I like to be. But I realized certain people don't take that so well, right? Like where I need to set boundaries. I mean, I'm still going to be kind, but I'm going to set boundaries and say, okay, this far and not further, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something I am learning at the moment, right? Because
Okay.
open and it's just my natural how I am. And it feels a little unnatural to say, no, okay, no, I want it like this, right? And not, and I can't compromise this time.
Oh, all right. That's actually very good. I didn't think about talking about boundaries and elderly people, but now I'm going to probably ask a question about that later, especially in your field of work. But thank you for sharing that. And okay, so let's start with what is your story? How did you come in contact with hypnotherapy, especially after starting as an MD?
hmm Well, I got in touch with it. So, with the subconscious work, right? Because hypnotherapy is working with the subconscious of a person, and talk therapy, right? The regular conventional therapy, which I think it's great, right? But it works with the consciousness, and the consciousness is often, we are often going in circles, right? Because we just can't fight the transformation, because in our brain we can always think differently, right? So how I came in contact the first time was with the subconscious work was through family system therapy. And that was in Austria when I used to live in Austria, and I was in med school. And that was overwhelming for me the first time. And then the second and third time I did that, it was really like physically altering me, because I did it as a patient, as a client, right? Where I was really like,
Mm-hmm.
jaw was unlocking, right? I mean, I didn't even know my jaw was so tense, but I could really feel, ooh, bodily, something shifted when we addressed something subconsciously. And that was that. And your question actually let me reminisce on that, or let me remember that, because then again, I was here already for a longer time, and in the States, right? I moved here, and then I I felt like, I wanted to work on myself again, and there were issues coming up. And I realized just talking about it is great. And I have an amazing awareness, right? And people were like, oh, you have such good awareness. But I realized the awareness alone is not letting me shift in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found out about Marissa Peer's RTT hypnotherapy, and I just felt drawn to it. And from that on, I was just like, okay, I'm going to do this training. And I pretty quickly did. And so the subconscious, what I learned from working with the subconscious, it's just that the topics, the habits, the patterns, when you talk about addiction or childhood trauma, that they are usually in the subconscious, right? They
Mm-hmm.
stored there. And we don't have access in our daily life. So that's why it's so powerful. And so in my own experience, once I started working with the subconscious with myself, I saw changes in my life, and not only being able to identify, but really a behavioral change, right? And
Mm-hmm.
not somebody else telling me, oh, you need to do this instead of this, but really it came out from me to behave a certain way or to perceive the world a different way. And so, yeah, I don't know if I even directly replied to your question, but that's how hypnotherapy works, right? It's really on that subconscious level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, yeah, you did. Like my question was also how you go. So like from what I gathered so far, you got in touch with hypnotherapy for personal reasons, but at
Yeah,
the time you were training as a MD.
I had already finished that training as
Oh,
a head
okay.
teacher, and then I just felt drawn to it. Yeah, I was really like on the quest of my own, answering my own questions and healing myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, myself or with help, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I found Marissa Peer online, RTT, and then I think it didn't take long when I was so convinced that I said, yeah, I want to train in this. And I had already prior started to working as an emotional healer, where
Mm-hmm.
I dived into more the subconscious, but she gave me a concrete tool. And I was also certified then, like,
Mm-hmm.
and definitely, yeah. So these were my reasons for training with her.
Yeah. Um, Before we delve in the reasons why hypnotherapy should be used or work, describe to us how a typical hypnotherapy session looks like.
So the typical one is 3 hours long. So I usually,
What?
yeah, and that's good. I see you now because that is the look I usually get. Yeah. So,
3 hours.
mhm. But
Okay.
in return, it gives you really an amazing transformation, right? And usually
Mm-hmm.
my clients are like, "What? It's 3 hours already?" Because it goes fast. So the first half hour we talk about the issue on a conscious level, right?
Yeah.
And usually I also get an intake before where the client feels out already, or in the consultation I find more information about them already. And then we go into the hypnosis where we go with one or two questions, right? Let's say I'm coming in to a hypnotherapist and I say, okay, I have an issue with addiction, with food. I can't stop eating sweets and it's bad for me. I have already this and this showing up in my blood, right? And I need to do something, but I can't, right? And I'm very disciplined in other areas, but with food, I can't stop once I start, right? And so we're going to go into the subconscious. I mean, we're going to talk more, but we're going to go into the subconscious asking, why can't I stop? Or why can't I be more disciplined when it comes to sweets? Or why can't I stop eating sweets, right? Or we can also, if we find out on the conscious level that already, okay, food gives me emotional, it fills me emotionally, right? It makes me feel like I'm not so alone. Then we can say, okay, why do I use food to fill me up, right? For example. Then we go into the subconscious, and I always say, then scenes are gonna come up, right? And we always sense scenes. So a scene from our life, basically, I would say, now we're going back to a scene that is the exact reason why I can't be more disciplined with food today, or why I use food to emotionally fill me up, right? And the scene for different people, it might be different, right? For some people, they see it when they have you have your eyes closed, they see exactly everything and they hear it, and some smell it. Some people just feel it, right? They
Mm-hmm.
can't see it. It's different with everybody, right? It's very individual. And then let's say I come up with a scene, right, where I'm alone, where I'm, let's say, 5 years old or 7 years old, and I'm sad and nobody's here for me. My mother can't deal with my tears because she just says, "Oh, stop crying, it's not so bad, blah, blah, blah." And she's just leaving. And there's a cake there, right? And I eat the cake and I feel so good, right? And I feel like, oh, this is making me feel better now, right? Because nobody else made me feel better, right? And as a 5 or a 7-year old, I depend on other people teaching me, being here for me, right? Even as a 30-year-old, I depend on other people making me feel better when I feel sad, right? I want someone that I can, a shoulder to cry on, right? We need that a lifelong, right? But especially as a child, because we learn how to deal with those overwhelming things. And then I eat the cake, right? And in my subconscious is stored when I feel bad, when I cry, when it's sad, I can eat something sweet and it makes me feel better, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not the best way, but it's the way I learn in this moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that could be, right? And then in hypnotherapy, we would take that scene and we would be that 5 or 7 year old again, because that's still in me, right? That's my
Mm-hmm.
inner child, we call it, or my younger self. And then that Carolina, that younger version of me, would say, "Mom," right? She would see mom in front and she would say, "Mom," or "Mommy," or however I called her or somebody called her. "Why didn't you? I wish you would have hugged me. I wish you would have taken my emotions seriously," right? She can say everything that she couldn't say because nobody listened to her on that level, right? She can really express herself emotionally. And that changes your entire life, believe me. Like saying that changes the 30-year-old or the 40-year-old now, because everything we suppress, right? And words are so powerful, is suppressed and stays inside. So if that 5-year-old can say it now, it's never too late. It's really changing everything up until now in me. So I say that, and then I can say, whatever else is there that I wished. And then I can say, I used food. Now I can see I used food to give me what I wish you had given me, right? But now I can see that. So I'm going to give you back that inability to console me, to be here for me on that level.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be here for me that in that level. Or I let other people be here for me on that level, right?
Mm-hmm.
I create that opportunity because often we also then close up and we don't let anyone else be here for us like that because we think it's normal what our mother did, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to make a mother bad here, right? With all
Yeah, I get it.
they always do the best they can, right? So I'm
Mm-hmm.
not for blaming. We also don't do blame, but we just look at what it did in you. And then through those words, right? And then you can say, okay, I'm giving you that back, and really imagine giving something back. And that changes something in you because now you don't carry that anymore, right? You don't carry that thinking that, oh, it's too much for someone when I cry. Oh, I must be so hysterical. Probably when I cry, I'm too much, right? So that all goes then. And then, often tears are coming, right? And because, we cry that out. And then immediately or obviously right afterwards, the relationship to sweets is changed, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I realize I used that to make me feel better when I cry. Now I'm using something else. Now I can say, okay, no, I'm going to call my friend next time when I'm sad.
Yeah.
I'm going to call my friend. I'm going to do this or that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there are scenes coming up, or there are other ways I used to heal then in hypnosis, right? When we are
Mm-hmm.
that's one. And I think, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oof. Oof. There's a lot to impact there. That's thank you. Thank you for the but like always curious. Like
Mm,
first of all, our subconscious, when our subconscious buries stuff, right? It's in
mm,
order to protect us, right?
very good.
Yeah.
So I always say also, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, only those scenes, because I have clients come and say, well, what do you think this and this comes up? Or what if something comes up that I can't take? I always,
Mm-hmm.
your subconscious protects you.
Mm-hmm.
Even when we dive into the subconscious, it will only give free what it knows you are able to handle today.
Really? How?
Mhm.
I'm curious because like since it's the subconscious and you're not conscious of it, can you put a limit on what you are unraveling? Like,
That's a really good question. And looking back now, there were, I want to say, some clients, things would come up that overwhelmed them a little
mm-hmm.
here to support, right? And that's why, I mean, you need to do that with someone, right, that has done that before. Uh, and e- the support helps you to deal with it then. But even the subconscious, I always say, here we have our intelligence of the brain, right? And then our
Mm-hmm.
body, our subconscious is the intuition, the intelligence of our body. So I believe that although it's the subconscious, you are coming up with the scene, right?
Yeah.
I'm not forcing you to come up with any scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I still believe you come up with the scenes that are important right now, the scenes that you are able to deal with right now. So
Mm-hmm.
that's still my belief and my experience also, right? Like I said,
Mm-hmm.
I had scenes come up sometimes with clients that were very unexpected and very surprising, but
Mm-hmm.
nothing in the end they couldn't handle in that moment with help, right?
Okay, I see. So that's so my following up question with that. So there's this is a two-part question. So since you said like the subconscious doesn't come up, there's no sin that comes up that you cannot handle because even if it's a subconscious, like there's some kind of limit there to what you can handle. Does it mean that like at first, let's say like somebody come for a first session,
Mm.
what they unravel, what their subconscious unravel at first is milder than what later sessions with you. So like they go deeper and deeper and like more severe trauma later on.
That's a really good question. So I do believe once people come in with a certain topic, right,
Mm-hmm.
they are ready to unravel a lot of it, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe so I so with me it's usually people come in with one topic and then later they want to work on something else, or they want a shorter session, because we do the 3-hour session on one topic and then they can book shorter sessions to talk about it later, right, and about their progress and about um but then usually the next 3-hour session is usually about a different topic, because usually the unraveling is really working. It always brings the right stuff up, actually, the thing that they need to transform the issue. Like when it comes to tweets now, the example I gave, right? um I've never had anyone that didn't come up with scenes that would help them get transform that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I'm thinking, maybe some scenes don't come up, but the scenes that come up are enough, or are the ones that are enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so how I what I also tried, because I'm remembering your question, right? Um, what I'm thinking is, as soon as you open up, sometimes also when they need to fill out the intake form, right? I think you are already geared subconsciously. It's already gathering somehow, right? Like the
Yeah.
information, because you're opening up to that topic. So I do believe there's a protection. And I want to just reply to what you said before also, because it is protection. Even when I described that scene that I just made up, right, with I'm eating cake because I'm not consoled in the moment, um, is basically, like you said, it is a coping mechanism, right? A
Mm-hmm.
survival. And in that sense, it is protecting me, right? So everything, so often I say those coping mechanisms and those survival mechanisms, they are helping us survive, right? They
Mm-hmm.
are important, but I can see that as an adult, it might be in your way, right? As a
Mm-hmm.
kid, it might be important to survive, to dissociate, right? Or to rationalize something that you shouldn't need to rationalize. But as a child, it's important. But as an adult, it's usually in your way and you can give it up.
Okay, I see. And yeah, so when people come to you, how strong the subconscious can be good at burying things? Because I'm I'm sure you have, among your clients, people who are like already predisposed to experience something new, and you had other who are like very skeptical and just try because there's nothing else, or like they were maybe forced to try. But like, were there a situation where like you were like, "Who that person's subconscious is really strong"?
That's a really good question. I'm, I don't think I would say the subconscious can be stronger or not so strong, in different people, uh, because it's really, we access it and then subconscious is subconscious, right? But I
Okay.
people that are skeptical, but I don't have people that are so skeptical, right, that they don't believe it will work, because then it probably won't work, right? Because if you don't
Mm-hmm.
believe it will work, you won't let me in the subconscious, right? So, for example, I sometimes have mothers that want to send their children, right? And it works often when the child wants that too, or the teenager. Um, but if just the mother wants it, I would say, no, I'm not even taking that child, right? Because that's, I mean, it needs to definitely always be free will. And then
Okay.
we had someone that was a scientist, right? And she said she was very, very, very skeptical. So she was actually very surprised how it worked, right? Um, but there needs to be an openness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Open, but I wouldn't say there is more. But I think what you're also asking is it for someone that maybe was more skeptical? It can definitely be more surprising because they might have not had access to the subconscious, right? Because through meditation, for
Mm-hmm.
example, we can access that part, right? And if somebody comes that has never meditated, that has never done anything, the subconscious might be more surprising to them and might be
Mm-hmm.
more foreign to them, and they might be almost a little scared, right?
Mm-hmm.
But others that tried meditation before, they're probably more familiar with it. Um, yeah, but I also, so not, but I also send a little recording of 8 minutes before I work with someone. I send an 8 minute recording so they can listen to hypnosis, to my voice on the recording, and they can see how that feels. So I always
Mm.
also, how does that feel? So they get a little taste, because some people are really kind of like scared or kind of like a little bit,
Yeah.
um,
It's like priming, it's like a little bit priming the body, the mind before accessing it. I get it.
yeah,
Yeah.
because
So,
don't, yeah. Mhm.
mhm. So like once a trauma has been uncovered through hypnotherapy, what is the following work that you do?
So the following work is really to being here for that client in that trauma, right? Because
Mhm.
I love Gabor Mate, for example, right? He's
Mhm.
a psychiatrist. I think he practices out of Canada, but he's world renowned. And he says that, it's not that trauma keeps us traumatized, but trauma only keeps us traumatized if nobody is here for us in the moment to be with us and to help us work through the trauma, right?
Mhm.
So if I'm experiencing something overwhelming as a child and nobody is here for me to hold that with me, right? To hold that emotion that I feel, to help me work through it, then it becomes trauma, and then it's stored in me, right? And then it would come up again, right?
Mhm.
Um, so coming back to your question, I actually, I forgot your question.
No, like what's the following work? You said like you have to
Oh,
stay with them. So like
yeah.
does it become like then regular therapy? Like
Yeah, it becomes that therapy up on the subconscious that I really guided before, right? Like, you express what you feel in that moment, right?
Mhm.
You would stress, I feel so overwhelmed. This scares me so much. I'm so lost. Like
Mm-hmm.
I wish somebody would be here now and hold me, right? For example, like really, again, I mean, it sounds simple, but yeah, that's the part of the therapy. Expressing what you feel, expressing what that younger you felt in the trauma, in the
Mm-hmm.
moment of the trauma, right? Expressing that, expressing the emotions, crying if they feel like it, feeling paralyzed if they felt like it then, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then knowing that they went through it and knowing also the older self is here now. So at the end of that, I also always have the older self going in there, right? If it's my 5-year-old in that scene and I see that, and after I talked to the other people in the scene, if there are any, then I would always let the me walk into the scene that I'm now, right? The adult me, and really tell that girl, I'm going to be here for you no matter what, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm talking to the inner part of that, right? To my inner child that I'm always carrying in me, right? Because when we grow older, we don't just shed the younger versions of us, right? They stay in us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we really deal with the trauma, right? That transformation inside you. It's really, it really feels like something is like, I always say, like something is like Tetris, or like, no, I don't know. I mean, I think very analytical. So in Tetris, right, it all comes together.
Yeah.
It really feels like it's falling and it's going down because it's or like a, a watch, right? It's an old time watch, right? It's
Y-
something moving and everything is
Yeah.
moving, right? So it's really like when you say those words, they're just so powerful, and they yeah, and they really move the entire system. So
Mm-hmm.
that work through the trauma, right?
Yeah.
Express what are you feeling in that moment? What do you need? What
Mm-hmm.
did what do you know now? Yeah.
Yeah, I see. So to go back to how strong the subconscious is, we all have trauma. It's fair that, nobody can live without trauma. But should we address all trauma in our life, especially if they don't seem to affect us daily?
I love that question. No, I don't think so. Yeah, I think the one, and we usually also don't do it, right? We do the
Mm-hmm.
one our way, right? We usually only face our trauma or even realize we have trauma when it's in our way in the moment, right? When
Yes.
something is not working, right? I can't
Mm-hmm.
seem to have a good relationship. Can't seem to hold a job down. I can't seem to um, not use any substances, right? That's when
Mm-hmm.
we it, right? If nothing of that happens, I don't think anyone ever thinks, oh, I had traumas, but I just don't know it. Let me find, right?
Let me find it. Yeah, that's nonsense. Like, thank you for
Yeah,
saying that, because I will like, I would be surprised if you had said otherwise, because yeah.
yeah, no. But I love the question. It's such a good question. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. If everything is good, don't mess
yeah.
with the system, like everything. But um oh, you just mentioned it earlier. Like, if you seem to not be able to stop using drugs or alcohol, you're victim of addiction. So in a case of, since this is a podcast about addiction and recovery, in the case of addiction, where, like, people cope with alcohol or drugs to recover from their trauma, to process the ramification of their trauma. Um,
Mhm.
Take us through the steps with a victim of addiction, because even if they realize it, it's not, because addiction is also a body thing, right? It's a body, it's both mind and body addiction. They're not necessarily going to stop taking drugs or drinking right away, right? It's not like an emotional thing, right?
That's a good question. When I work when I work with addicts, I know it's also physical, and
Mm-hmm.
I send them a tape out after the session, a very individualized tape of the last 15 minutes of the session, where it's basically affirmed everything what you want to do in the future, right? Be indifferent to that substance. But since we really heal that part, right? That was that void, or that, you know, pain that made someone use instances to not feel that pain or to fill that void.
Mhm.
Since we heal that, it is really all like it's really more the emotional part. That's what I experience, right? And the physical part is just following. I mean, I understand there are physical parts where you can really need to, right? You have withdrawal symptoms.
Withdrawal symptoms, yeah.
Yeah. And that's physically. But from what I experience, the emotional, psychological part is a bigger part of it. And
Mhm.
that really was the main chunk of the people I have worked with, have had
Mhm.
the pleasure of working with. So I wouldn't say I would, say, no, that's not there,
Mhm.
but I have not had it be a problem
Mhm.
with the people I work
Okay.
with. Not saying it might not be for someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I understand. So like basically if even if you like, you're in recovery, like a person who is victim of addiction should work, it would be beneficial to them to work with the subconscious of the trauma, but also to work on the physical part of it. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
And
So
even
like,
like about AA meetings, right?
yeah. Mhm.
So much focus on mentorship, right? On really that emotional component to fill that with other activities, with other things.
Mhm.
And I mean, I think that's really also there, but just we do it in 1 or 2 sessions, right? That really that is uncovered and healed really. Because
Mhm.
once it's healed, there's not the need for that anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
Really believe the emotional psychological component is more than the need that the body needs it, right? Because
Mhm.
um yeah.
Because you think that it's mind stronger over body at some point, right?
That's also, yeah, I realized I just said that. I do believe, yeah, I
Mhm.
think our body can be very strong, right? I mean, yeah, no doubt, right? But I do believe, right, that our mind is really stronger because even like
Mhm.
right, when we tell our mind, I just said that even in the hypnosis, I often say to people, to see how suggestible you are. Imagine, I mean, their eyes are closed. Imagine there's half of a lemon piece, right? And you put it in your mouth and you imagine you squeeze that lemon in your mouth and all of a sudden your body producing saliva and you might make a grimace because that's how you feel
Mhm.
about it, right? But there was no real lemon juice, but your
Yeah.
mind told your body there is. So your body reacted because your body did exactly what your mind told it, right? Your mind
Mhm.
told there's lemon juice and the body said, okay, then I need to react like this, right?
Mhm.
The same when I tell myself or when somebody tells me, oh, you're so clumsy. Then when I tell myself I'm clumsy, then my feet will just trip over something, right?
Yeah.
Because I tell myself I'm clumsy. So my body's like, okay, I'm gonna show you the clumsy, right? Whatever you want me to do, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I definitely see and experience also. Yeah.
Yeah, I see. Let's talk about a little bit of spirituality. How do you think a mind can recover from trauma without spirituality?
I love the question. Also, I feel like I actually don't even know my description of spirituality because I do believe the work I'm doing is actually there's spirituality involved. I think
Mhm.
goes to the spirit, right? Um, but I think spirituality for me is also connected to religion, right? And or to a higher power or God
Yeah.
or
Like
uh,
higher, so my definition of spirituality is, yeah, like religion is very involved because that's what people get most of the time, but it's more like a description of a higher power, understanding that there's something out there that's bigger than you that you cannot explain, and being at peace with that.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it's part of the work. Really, I really do believe spirituality goes hand in hand with that work because I do believe even by the work I described just now, right, where we say those words in that space, right, where
Hmm.
the other person is not even here, but you give them back baggage that's not yours. Or that's a spiritual practice, in my opinion, right? Because we also do that when, I mean, I grew up very Catholic. I went to church every day for a certain period of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I remember in church, they also, right, you give God your problems and you really believe he can solve it. Like, but God is in my opinion, that's my opinion, God is in you, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think in that moment when you do that, the hypnotherapy, when you do healing of trauma, that's that God working in you, right? Or that,
Mm-hmm.
I want to call it God, but that spiritual power working in you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tend to agree too. Like, I'm definitely a believer in, like you mentioned AA before. Like, I go to AA so often, but like I'm more into the 12 steps and the book. And
Mm-hmm.
I really believe in being spiritual fitness. For my case, I feel like that's being spiritually fit. That's keeping me sober. And yeah, you mentioned earlier people's energy and being an emotional healer. And when you described at the beginning the thing about with in your state of the mind address that you need to establish boundaries and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I found myself in situations, even most recently, where like I could sense more or less people's energy, like something that I couldn't put tangibly, tells me that the energy was a little bit off. And I found myself saying that to other people, that energy never lies. Because what happens most of the time, later on, I get concrete example that my intuitions were confirmed. But me being also a very analytical guy, like pragmatic, and because I'm an engineer from profession,
Mm-hmm.
I I still don't feel always comfortable just relying on that feeling, because there's no empirical evidence that somebody did something wrong before me feeling that way about that person. But then I get vindicated later when I get that information later. But do you
Mm-hmm.
think like people's energy can tell a story before even their action?
I do believe it, but I also do believe that your energy meter needs to be really, how do you say it? What do you need to do as an engineer? You know that
Calibrated?
calibrated. Thank you.
Yeah,
I trust that because actually that's where I am in my life, where I'm like, I'm not sure if it's calibrated correctly now or if I'm just bringing past experience into this. If this person,
exactly. Yeah.
then it could be empirical, right? Because that past person could have the same energy.
Hmm.
But I believe, uh, because you said, you're an engineer and analytic and stuff, I do believe just because we don't have studies to it yet, like I said before, I 100% believe, your brain has the intelligence that we usually need in our world, in school and studying, right? But our body has the intelligence of intuition, right? Or we call it intuition, right? So there
Hmm.
is big intelligence, I mean, in our body, right? Um, and just we don't, because we don't measure that with an IQ yet, right? Or bodily Q, I
Hmm.
mean, emotional Q that we can measure. But that doesn't mean it's not there. Just
Yes.
not proven doesn't mean it's not there, right? So I
Mhm.
believe that, I mean, that's where I'm really am in my progress, that I'm trying to figure out, is it real, or do I just need to step up, take a few days and look
Mhm.
and see and come back to it, or the person, and see how I feel, and was that right? um I think once you can trust, and your energy meter is calibrated, then I think beautiful, right? Then I would definitely trust that.
Mhm. Like, so me, I'm gonna tell you about my process. When my energy meter informs me that that person energy is a little bit off, what
Mm-hmm.
I try to tend to do is uh, give that person more time before getting close to that person, because I want to protect myself. You talk about boundaries. uh some people are like, oh, like you should not judge people because like you don't know them.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with the greater aspect of it. That's true. But how do you establish healthy boundaries if you don't make an assessment of somebody else's behavior? Like, it's in order to protect yourself too. So if somebody's energy or behavior is, I look at it, I'm like, hey, I don't know about that person. Like, let me put like a stronger boundary in order to know them. I'm not like, do you understand the difference I'm trying to come to? I'm not judging them per se. I'm just being careful for myself.
And I think that's amazing. Yeah, I think I that's exactly what I mean when I talk about boundaries, right? And with me, it's
Mm-hmm.
often that I let a person close already, and then I need to push away and then establish a new boundary.
Yeah.
I think it's good that you look more carefully before you let them step closer. And I think I think that's totally legit. I think that's important, right? I just recently, my son is 6. He picked up on that because he was like, I like the word pillow talk in English, right? When you are a
Mm-hmm.
bit asleep. He recently asked me, Mommy, are you friends with this person again now, right? Because there was
Mm-hmm.
a friend in my life and she overstepped boundaries. And it was very like, she really harassed me. And I had to set a boundary and I had to block her, right? And that I probably couldn't even have seen before. I feel there were a few signs maybe, but anyways, and I said, yeah, I am, but I don't, because we see her everywhere. She has a son too, right? But I wouldn't trust her fully again, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just, and it was very interesting because he really got that. And I think kids feel energy so much better because, especially when they're even younger, because they don't even have words yet. So
Mm-hmm.
all they have is energy, right?
Yeah.
All they see and feel is energy. And we then really went through all my friends and his friends and see how much do we trust them? How far do we go with them? And I'm like, he's so in tune with that talk, right? That's so normal for him. So
Mm-hmm.
it should be normal for us too, actually. And I think it's important because I found myself then in the park, not, when you walk somewhere and you can't look there or you don't want to say hi. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, in my opinion, that's restricting me because
Yeah.
it's
Me too.
my openness. So I say hi and I chat a little,
Mm-hmm.
but I have a boundary now that is different than before, right?
Yeah.
I think that's really, again, going back to us, I listened to Aaron Doughty, I think you would call his name today, and he said
Mm-hmm.
that so perfectly, right? When we blame others, when we judge, right?
Yeah.
Go through our aura first, and it's harming us first, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't do that because it's harming me. So I would send them also the best, right? I'm not saying that's a bad person, right? I would just say, okay, I just want to establish this and this boundary with that person. That's just better for me, right?
Yeah. Like, because me, at the beginning, like I said, when I didn't have empirical data of a person being, not bad, but like, let's say bad for me, I would
Mm,
be like, I will shut that, the instinct of the energy down because I'm like, oh, I'm being just judgy. Then I was gonna let them, I used to let them too close, and it will cost me, like, especially being in recovery and stuff. Like, I had porous boundaries when I was in addiction, and there are some people I should have cut off right away because, just my instinct was about them was like, yeah, that person, I'm not getting much about, like, they're just not for me.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we can also hear, I mean, you mentioned you have kids, right? We can learn so much from them because kids actually, they don't want to go to everyone, right? I see it.
Mm-hmm.
I love the parents that say, I mean, there is a movement of parents that say, my kids don't need to hug anyone, even if
Mm-hmm.
it's, they don't want that, right? I mean, if they just, I don't know. I mean, there is also, we know our kids, right? If they just want to harm someone or stuff, then it's different. But I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully do that, right? But um, I don't force my kids to that, right? Because I think that's where also it can stem from, that not being able to set boundary. Because if I tell my son, oh no, you need to be nice to that person, you need to play with that person, you need to hug that person, when they don't feel it, then they
Mm-hmm.
they have to do that in life later too, right? Then they do it
Yeah.
automatically, and that harms them because I teach them that, right? So I think that's very important also for people that have kids to consider that.
Yeah, that's good. So, like, one last question before I give you the floor. Um, it's a question that I ask every guest. What is your relationship with alcohol and drugs in general? Like,
Mm. Yeah, so at this point, none of it is interesting to me. I just I know it exists, right? That's my relationship.
mm-hmm,
I drinking then and when before I got pregnant with my little one now. And then I saw a lot of studies that said not even a little bit alcohol is good for you. And it was
mm-hmm,
not hard. So I'm not drinking at all. And drugs, I have to say, actually, I lied before because one thing I feel like I want to try day is ayahuasca. So
yeah.
that's I'm open to, and I want to try at one point in my future. But other than that, yeah, my relationship, I don't know how I would even call that, is very
Non-existent. Yeah,
non-existent, very far. Yeah,
yeah.
like I can be. It doesn't influence me really. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, we're hitting the 45-minute mark here, and that was a beautiful conversation. So, I'm going to leave the floor up to you. Like, you can, conclude or let me know or ask a question. It's up to you.
Now, I really love this conversation. Thank you so much for your wonderful questions. I mean,
Mhm.
I definitely leave my website here. So it's
Mhm.
www.whyhypnotherapy.com. So you can look it up. I just got a marketing assistant. She made a website out of it. So that's all I would leave you with, because you really, your questions were so amazing that I actually said everything I would ever want to say about
Mm.
hypnotherapy. Point.
All
Thank
right. That's great. By the way, that's a great domain name. Why hypnotherapy? That's awesome. Like, that's easy, like, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys for the conclusion. Bye. All right. This concludes episode number 52 of Hypnotherapy. Thank you very much to Carolina for being a wonderful guest to the podcast. I learned so much about this practice that I thought was kind of obscure at first. Like, for me, hypnotherapy was like a lot of like hypnosis, transform people, not transform people, but make people act like, roosters and that kind of stuff. That's just that's my preconception I had of the thing because of what I saw on TV. But yes, I did learn a lot. I hope that you guys really like this episode. I attach all the information for Carolina on the podcast description. I might even be myself tempted to try a session. We never know. And as you always, guys, follow us on social media, support us through the podcast, and support us through Patreon as well. And I will see you guys in a few weeks. Bye.